Hello everyone, and welcome to this video. We're going to use the completing the square method to find the roots of the quadratic equations. Alright, the steps to completing the square are we have to move any number that does not have a variable to the right hand side of the equal sign by adding or subtracting it over. We have to make sure that the coefficient on x squared, or the first variable there, is 1. Now here comes the work that we'll have to do to set this up to complete the square. Our objective is to change our left-hand side into a perfect square trinomial. So to do that, we'll take the coefficient on x, the number on x, multiply it by 1/2, and then square that number. Now when we get that final answer, that final number, we'll add it to both sides of the equal sign, and that'll turn our left-hand side into a perfect square trinomial. And then we can factor it by using one of these two rules here. If it's a plus here, then it'll be a plus b squared. If there's a minus here, then it'll be a minus b squared. Now after we get to that step, we'll take the square root of both sides, and then you have to remember, when you take the square root of a number, you want to add the positive negative symbol out there. So we'll add that to the right hand side. Split up the equations into two equations and solve them. Okay, so let's look at a couple of problems. Alright, so we have x squared minus 1/3 x equals 0. Well, we don't have a number here by itself, so it's nothing to move over. It's understood to be a 1 in front of x squared, so our coefficient is what we need it to be in front of x squared. So we're going to start off with the number, or the coefficient, that's on x. We're going to take that number, we're going to multiply it by 1/2, which will give us 1/6. And you're going to see that number again. We're going to take that number and we're going to square it. 1 squared is 1, 6 squared is 36. So that gives us 1/36. Now this is the number that we'll add to both sides of the equal sign. So you have to half it, half your middle number, or half the number that's on x, and then square it. And that's what you're going to add to both sides of the equal sign. And then right here you have 0 plus 1/36. Now what that does for us, that turns our left hand side into a perfect square trinomial, and we can use that factoring rule that we learned to factor this out, and that'll factor out to x minus 1/6 squared. Now whatever number that you get right here when you take 1/2 of your middle number, that's the number you'll have here. It's just a square root of 1/36, 1/6 squared, and then that'll give us 1/36 on that side. Now what we can do here to get rid of that exponent square so we can solve the equation, we can take the square root of both sides, and that should be under there. Now when you take the square root of a number in an equation, you have to add your positive negative symbol there. Now on the left hand side, the square root symbol and the exponent square will cancel each other out, and we'll just have whatever expression was underneath it, x minus 1/6. Right here, these are perfect squares. 1 is a perfect square, and so is 36. So I can take the square root of that. That'll give me positive negative 1/6. Now what we'll do, we will split this up into two separate equations, because we have to have the positive 1/6 in one, and then we'll use the negative 1/6 in the other. And once you get that split up, you solve both of those equations. So you get x equals 2/6, and we can reduce that or simplify that to be x equals 1/3, or add 1/6 over here to this negative 1/6. Negative 1/6 plus 1/6 will be 0. So our roots would be 1/3 and 0. Okay, so we want to turn this into a perfect square trinomial, take the square root of both sides, and then solve the equations. Okay, let's look at another example. X squared plus 10x equals 0. Again, we have a coefficient of 1 in front of x squared. Don't have anything right here to move over. So we're going to start off by taking half of the middle number, multiplying it by 1/2, which is 5. And then we're going to square that number, which is 25. And that's what we add to both sides of our equal sign. So we'll have x squared plus 10x, add the 25 here, add the 25 over here. Now, our left-hand side is now a perfect square trinomial. So now I can factor this using our perfect square trinomial rule. X plus 5 squared. And the reason we want to factor that is because I can take the square root of x plus 5 squared. So now I can get rid of that square, the exponent square, by taking the square root of both sides. And remember to put your positive negative on that right hand side. The square root symbol and the exponent square cancels out. That gives us x plus 5. The square root of 25 is 5, so I have positive or negative 5. Split them up into two equations and solve. So subtract 5 here, subtract 5 here. 5 minus 5 is 0. That's one root. And our root won't always be 0. It just happened like that in these two problems. Subtract 5 here, subtract 5 here. Our other root is negative 10. And that is how you use the completing the square method to find your roots. Okay, good luck.